Okay, this one's a little weird for Christmas, but it's the one that comes up in order. And I have a lot of strong feelings about it because of everything that the pandemic taught us about humans and perception and reality. I read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel in 2022. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. This one flew by. I liked it very much, but reading about a killer flu as we're dealing with what we desperately hope to be the late stages of COVID is either exactly what draws people to this or something that should make people shy away from it based on their sensitivities to the pandemic. For me, the premise felt a little exaggerated because of what we've just been through. It's hard for me to take the leap to the darker place in this book after living through the comparatively mild darkness of COVID much of the time. I felt things couldn't be this bad because we know how things like this go now. But obviously, it's a fictitious take on just how bad it could really get with a more aggressively murderous strain. Because of my cognitive dissonance on this, the first third of the book was a bit of a struggle. It also didn't help that I didn't particularly like or care about Arthur. The nonlinear storytelling is executed wonderfully in this book. But when you don't want to spend time with certain characters, their sections become a slog. None of that mattered once the book took off with the traveling symphony. It quickly moves into a page turner that you won't want to put down. I appreciate Mandel taking the time to tell all of those stories in her way, even the ones I wasn't interested in, like Arthur's, because she wrapped them around in a wonderfully profound way. If you can get past any negative emotions that you have about the pandemic and push back pride you may feel about our survivability within it, and or you'd like to explore the extreme end of the spectrum for how bad a pandemic could be, this book will likely be an exciting, creative journey for you. So reflecting on this review is very strange for me right now to think about the pandemic. I want to start by just saying that I really love Emily St. John Mandel's writing, and this one was the first introduction for me to it. I really loved the book. The pandemic stuff in here is really interesting to me, and I feel like I'm going to get a fair amount of criticism for talking about COVID as comparatively mild darkness. I would really like to find out if Mandel wrote this before the COVID experience or if it was a result of the COVID experience. The COVID thing for me is very strange, and reflecting on the pandemic in general makes me confused. One of the things that really frustrates me about COVID or confuses me about COVID is that no matter how you believed, you ended up being validated as a result of it. I think about Texas and Florida and the laws there that just left people open and let them go out to beaches and to businesses. I live here in Oregon, so we had a completely different experience here. Everything was closed and there were a lot of mask laws for a long time. As people argued on either side of COVID, it is possible that those places had more deaths. It is possible also that they were more economically successful as a result of those open plans. It's a bit revealing to be existing in this way, to understand that in terms of the pandemic, regardless of what you believed, you were validated in that belief. And that's not manifestation, but that is something about perception. And that matters here in this book because it's definitely a darker look on what would happen in the case of a pandemic. It's more restrictive. It's the word that I use here in the review is more aggressively murderous, and it is in the book. But there are a large group of people who felt the same way about COVID. And there are a large group of people who felt exactly the opposite about COVID. And the weird thing about the pandemic is no matter how you felt, you ended up being right for you. That's a very weird thing to consider. So this is a really interesting book to consider as well, because it puts you back in that place. The experience of the characters in the book is terrifying, and it's revealing to me to read their experience and realize that many people felt that way during COVID as well. My brain, the cognitive dissonance that I talk about here in this review, was consistently pushing back against that terror because my experience of COVID was somewhere in the middle. It was less terrible than what the people experienced in Station 11, but it was more terrible than the people who believed it was a hoax. I'm still confused. I don't think I know what's right. But reading this book and considering this book, thinking about the review, helps me to understand that perception is a major part of the reality that we experience. We get to choose. We get to choose how we perceive things. There is less objective truth than we realize. There may be none. And that's as good of a Christmas message as I can imagine. Merry Christmas. You get to choose. As I mentioned, I really, really like Emily St. John Mandel. I cannot recommend her writing enough. It borders on the supernatural, but it's really just great fiction with a lot of intense subject matter that feels very personal. And that's probably why this one was so effective for so many people. I read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel in 2022. I give it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Till next.